And lo, the beast looked upon the face of beauty, and beauty stayed his hand, and from that day forward, he was as one dead.
The Beast Who Won the Love of a Beauty first thrilled audiences in 1933. King Kong would years later influence a young boy to become a filmmaker. That young boy was New Zealand director Peter Jackson, who went on to make one of the most successful movie franchises in film history. That achievement allowed Jackson to carry out his lifelong dream.
It's a film that I owe my entire career to King Kong, because I saw the original 1933 movie when I was 9 years old and wanted to become a filmmaker ever since. Like, it was profound. Bang! I wanted to make movies.
I think Kong was one of the original event films. It was a spectacle, much like within the context of the film Kong was. This was a spectacle. This was a cultural phenomenon.
Throw your arms across your eyes and scream, man! Scream for your life!
To Peter Jackson, the 1976 film was sort of like, it's his blind spot. He kind of he misses it. He doesn't notice it. It didn't happen, so.
Action!
I just thought a version of this wonderful story told with the technology that we have available to us today would be a really amazing thing.
This was a no-brainer, which is why they basically just threw money at him.
A lot of people were a bit worried about this, with Jack Black being this kind of exuberant character that he is.
It was totally miscast. He just was not, he just doesn't have the weight for that role.
It was nerve-wracking because Faye had done it so well. It was, immortalized by her. And then we've got the other version, Jessica Lange. She did a great job too. Big shoes to fill.
One of the things that Pete said to us in the very first few days, I want it to be a horror show.
I think everybody was expecting him to fight a T-Rex, but I wanted to just go one step better.
When you're talking King Kong, everything is big. From the money to the special effects, everything.
As the film progressed, and it ended up costing $207 million, thus making it the most expensive movie in the history of cinema.
Peter Jackson was given $20 million to direct the film, which is still, right now, in the Guinness Book of World Records as the most payment given to a director.
As a film, it inspired more people to become filmmakers than any other film ever made. I'm absolutely certain of that fact.
Every Kong film has been an event almost more than it is a film. It's important, certainly, in the cultural zeitgeist. It is as an event, as a spectacle, as opposed to just a blockbuster movie.
Behind the Movies explores the eighth wonder of the world, King Kong.
Pace, it will come with it. More fun, more excitement,
Jackson has wanted to do King Kong since he was a kid.
The legend has it that he saw it on television when he was very young, and said as soon as he saw it, that's what I want to do.
I tried to remake Kong when I was 12 years old, and I actually did some stop motion with a little rubber 12-inch high King Kong that I made out of my mother's fur coat.
In fact, in 1997, when he was doing The Frighteners, Universal also gave him the green light, or at least the go-ahead, to do a script.
Oh my God, I don't believe this. It's not happening!
We have got a poltergeist!
Okay, well, folks, I can do a clearance, but it's not going to be cheap.
When I finish a movie, it's always good to do something different next. I mean, you don't want to remake whatever film you've just done before.
Jackson had written his first King Kong script and was ready to go, and then the plug got pulled because word came down that Sony was going to do a Godzilla remake with the guys that did Independence Day. At the same time, Disney was doing Mighty Joe Young remake, Mighty Joe Young being kind of the Kong ripoff.
I worked on it for 6 or 7 months. And then the studio pulled the plug on it then, and we did Lord of the Rings instead.
Good. Was a goodie.
And I guess Universal didn't want to compete with giant monster movies.
It's a film that I owe my entire career to King Kong, because I saw the original 1933 movie when I was 9 years old and wanted to become a filmmaker ever since. Like, it was profound. Bang! I wanted to make movies.
And make movies he did. But Jackson's passion for Kong would have to wait for just the right moment. In the meantime, audiences could still turn to the 1933 classic or the Dino De Laurentiis 1976 version to be entertained and inspired.
The original King Kong in 1933 was the first big sci-fi film. It was this massive, spectacular thing with something called special effects.
This is 1933, and people had a less of an ability to differentiate between what was real and what they were perceiving on the screen. They had no idea this wasn't a puppet. You know, this wasn't a guy in a gorilla suit. This was, as far as they were concerned, actually a 50-foot gorilla. The film was so shocking at the time that over the years of its initial release, little bits of it were pulled away that were deemed too shocking. There were maybe 6 minutes worth of scenes that were taken out over the course. Like, for example, when Kong reaches into the window, pulls out a woman, gives her a sniff, realizes it's not Fay Wray, and throws her to the street. Well, that was a little too shocking for audiences at the time. There were a lot of scenes of natives being crunched underfoot. The big scene, the scene that literally stopped the picture when it premiered in 1933, was the famous giant spider pit sequence.
There's all sorts of tantalizing rumors, as I guess there is with any mythology. There's people that believe that a really detailed hunt through film archives in Asia might unearth it, because depending on exactly when the spider sequence was actually removed from the film, you know, people are thinking, well, possibly it actually made it on board the ship to the Far East.
Not only was it excised from the film, it was actually destroyed. And it was never put back into the film until recently, when Peter Jackson, the King Kong freak that he is, actually not only recreated the scene for his film, but recreated the scene in the original parameters of the film in black and white, and actually had it inserted back into the most recently released DVD print of the film. I think Kong was one of the original event films. It was a spectacle, much like within the context of the film Kong was. This was a spectacle. This was a cultural phenomenon.
Throw your arms across your eyes and scream, man. Scream for your life.
Fay Wray, our great Canadian, one of the great Canadian actresses who formed early Hollywood, was already a big star. But in fact, interestingly, they did not actually want her originally for the film. They offered it to Jean Harlow, who turned it down. Fay Wray was the one that determined that her character, Vandero, should be a blonde.
Well, it was pretty obvious that I should be blonde because Kong was a big, tall, dark, so-called leading man. And I knew that it was right to be blonde.
The movie back then did actually make quite a bit of money. You won't see these large $1 million figures like you do now, of course, but it did actually make quite a bit of money when it originally came out.
The film made $90,000, I think, in its opening weekend, which doesn't sound like a lot now, but you got to keep in mind, A, that's 1933 dollars. B, movies only cost 15 cents at the time.
This was, of course, during the Depression, and they needed something to escape, and this was the ultimate escapist film.
King Kong, a fantastic adventure.
Much as the 33 Kong was very representative of its time, I think the 76 Kong is very representative of the 70s in terms of the excess and just the hyperbole and just the silliness.
The 76 film was definitely a victim of wrong place at the wrong time, good intentions but lacking technology. There was, you know, kind of Rick Baker in his monkey suit, and they had actually built this gigantic 40-foot tall animatronic that never really worked correctly, so it's, you know, it cost millions of dollars, and it's in the film for about 2.5 minutes. So I think it just, you know, was bad news from the get-go.
It had to be seen as all new, all improved, all spectacular. And it was very much in keeping with the De Laurentiis approach to filmmaking. Everything's big, bigger, bigger.